David Cohen.
We're with David Soul. David Soul Gold is 3-set CD with 44 songs from his 5 albums that you really will enjoy by going to davidsoul.com to pick that up. Anything that I've missed so far that you want to talk about?
One of the things that I'm most interested in doing right now is finishing up the restoration of Ernest Hemingway's 1955 Chrysler New Yorker Deluxe in Havana. And this has been a real story that started back. You see, us Americans have never been allowed to go to Cuba.
Right.
And when I was 15 years old, I read those Old Man and the Sea, and I think I always wanted to go to Cuba after that. And certainly Ernest Hemingway became one of my very favorite authors, as he is for so many Americans. Eventually, lo, these many years later, in 2004, I got my British citizenship. I have dual citizenship, U.S., U.K. And because I got a U.K. citizenship, I could take my passport and go to Cuba. And I did. And the first place that I wanted to go was Ernest Hemingway's home, in which he lived for 22 years, which is now a museum, the Hemingway Museum. He is revered in Cuba. He's a favorite son there because, he wrote Old Man and the Sea. The story continued after I first went to Ernest Hemingway's home, which is now, this museum, as I said. The director of the museum had just managed to get a hold of a dilapidated, broken down, crumbling Chrysler, 1955 Chrysler New Yorker Deluxe. It had been Ernest's car. It had been pulled out of a jungle, rotted, gone to pieces. And she wanted to restore it and put it on display at the museum, along with his famed boat, Pilar. And so she pulled me aside after I went out there and said, knowing that you're a British, UK, and US citizen, and we can't get car parts from the US, could you help us get the parts to fix the car, to restore the car, so we can, for display? I don't know anything about restoration of an automobile, but I love Ernest Hemingway, and I loved being there, and I loved being asked, and of course, I said yes. When I got back to London, where I'm living, I thought to myself, what am I going to do? I called a Practical Classics magazine. It's a classic car magazine. And then the idea came to me. I said, this could make it a great documentary from the very get-go. We'll do a documentary on this and tell the entire story behind this because of the problems that exist, the political problems that exist in the United States. And we started, and I put some of my own money into the initial stages of this film and got ourselves a film crew and started to tell this story right from the very beginning. I'm trying to pull all the pieces together. We went to Washington, spoke to people there, to Senator Jeff Flake and a couple of representatives about the problems that we were having about getting parts into Cuba and so forth. And I was chased around by the Department of Treasury and Office of Financial Assets Control, who threatened me with imprisonment and a $250,000 fine for trying to bring in parts. Finally, with the help of an attorney who had brought in these Buena Vista Social Club from Cuba into New York to Carnegie Hall, he was able to negotiate my right to bring in those parts based on historical preservation, notwithstanding the fact that Ernest Hemingway is one of the most famous writers we have in the United States.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then I ended up dealing with the horrendous bureaucracy of Cuba. But all of this is on film now. We got all this stuff on, documented. We have 120 hours of film. We have car parts that are still sitting in Miami, waiting to be shipped over. And we have the administration, Mr. Trump, has decided to be even more draconian in his policies towards Cuba. Obama had begun to open it up, and now we're closing it down again. And so we're hoping, soon. We're still filming, but we got to finish the car in order to finish the film.
You sort of need the ending, right?
We've got to have a finished car, don't we?
Right.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Well, let's hope it happens quickly. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
No, that's all right. This has been something that's consumed me now for the past 5-6 years now. you know,
Right.
up and down and in and out and no and yes and no again and yes and no. And it's been a bit of a frustration, but it's one of those things that you know you have to do. I think it's going to be a fascinating documentary.
Right. We're going to keep an eye out for that, and I'm sure you'll announce that in some way, shape, or form on davidsoul.com. I've seen some mention of this as well there. So,
Douglas, it's called Cuban Soul.
Cuban Soul. There you go. Cuban Soul on davidsoul.com. Look for that. Also, look for